The fearless, innocent girl tamed the most dangerous CEO. Now he is obsessed and only hers. Hi, my precious and cherished family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter's Stories. How my heart sings with pure joy to welcome you back to our sacred gathering at the home of the Peter Stories family, where love flows like a gentle river connecting all our souls. Seeing your beautiful spirits gathered here fills me with a warmth that could light up the darkest night. Before we weave today's tapestry of love, let us join our hearts in prayer. Dearest Heaven's Light, we thank you for blessing us with this magical moment where hearts beat as one. Let your divine love cascade through our spirits as we share stories that touch the deepest chambers of our souls. May every word we speak be a spark of hope, igniting joy in the gardens of each precious heart present. Amen. My beloved family, my heart still dances with the golden memories of Valentine's Day. When I beheld my darling Binta in her flowing white gown, time stood still. She was radiant with an ethereal beauty that surpassed even that magical moment 30 years ago when love first bloomed in my heart. The way love's light sparkled in her eyes reminded me that true love only grows more precious with each passing season. Would you allow me to share the enchanted tale of how destiny brought Binta and me together? How love transformed a shy man's whispered dreams into the courage to pursue an angel who walked on earth. Every precious moment is etched in the canvas of my heart with colors of pure joy. Please leave a gentle whisper of yes if you wish to hear our love story unfold. And tell me, are you still wrapped in the warm embrace of our family with Mr. Peter? How did love paint your Valentine's Day with its magical brush? Share with us the sweet surprises that made your heart flutter, for in this family every joy shared becomes a treasure for all. Shall we open the golden gates to our hearts and let today's story of love begin to bloom? With boundless love and tender care, Mr. Peter Stories. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Levi Enterprises' executive suite, its golden rays barely warming the Arctic atmosphere that surrounded Byron Levi. At 32, he commanded an empire that stretched across continents, yet the victory felt hollow in the emptiness of his penthouse office. Standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, Byron watched the city below with steel-gray eyes that had earned him the nickname Ice King. His reflection stared back at him, impeccable in a custom charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary, dark hair perfectly styled, jawline sharp enough to cut glass. Power emanated from every inch of his 6'2" frame. The whispers of employees scattered like leaves when he walked through the halls. Some called him ruthless, others called him brilliant. All feared him. The world saw what he wanted them to see, a man carved from marble, untouchable and unbreakable. Marcus, his executive assistant of 5 years, appeared silently at his door. "Mr. Levi, your 9 a.m. appointment has arrived." Byron didn't turn. "Send them in." His voice carried the chill of a winter storm. The door opened, and the click of heels against marble broke the silence. Something in the rhythm made him turn, a confidence in those steps that few dared to display in his presence. Time stopped. Florrie Winter stood in his doorway, and for the first time in years, Byron felt something crack in his carefully constructed walls. She wore a crisp white blazer that complemented her honey gold skin, her dark curls falling in perfect waves around a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. But it was her eyes that caught him, amber flecked with gold, holding a quiet fire that challenged his ice. "Mr. Levi," she said, her voice rich and melodious, "I'm here about the Henderson merger." He gestured to the chair across from his desk, watching as she moved with natural grace. "Ms. Winter, your reputation precedes you, as does yours." A hint of amusement colored her tone. She placed a leather portfolio on his desk, her manicured fingers elegant against the dark surface. "Tell me what you found." He remained standing, using height to his advantage as he always did. Florrie met his gaze without flinching. Inconsistencies, the kind that could sink both our companies if we don't address them immediately. Byron moved closer, ostensibly to look at the document she was spreading across his desk. The subtle scent of jasmine and vanilla teased his senses. "Explain." She stood, eliminating the height advantage, and pointed to a series of numbers. Her proximity sent an unfamiliar jolt through his system. These transactions don't match the reported earnings. Someone's hiding millions in offshore accounts. Her passion for the work showed in every gesture, every word. It awakened something in him, a recognition of kindred spirit perhaps, or something more dangerous. "How long have you been investigating this?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. 3 weeks. She turned to face him, and suddenly they were inches apart. "I don't sleep when something feels wrong." The air between them crackled with unspoken tension. Byron studied her face, noting the intelligence in her eyes, the determination in the set of her jaw, the softness of her lips. He stepped back abruptly. "We'll need to work closely on this." A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Can you handle that, Mr. Levi?" The challenge in her voice stirred something primal in him. "The question is, Ms. Winter, can you?" She gathered her documents with deliberate slowness. "I guess we'll find out." As she moved toward the door, she paused. "One more thing, Mr. Levi." "Yes." "The Ice King reputation?" "I've worked with Winter before. It doesn't scare me." The door closed behind her, leaving Byron standing in an office that suddenly felt too warm. He loosened his tie, a gesture he hadn't made in years. Marcus appeared with a stack of papers. "Sir, the board is waiting for your decision on the Asian expansion." Byron turned back to the windows, seeing not the city, but the fire in Florrie's eyes. "Cancel my afternoon appointments, all of them, and get me everything we have on the Henderson merger." "Yes, sir." Marcus hesitated. "And Ms. Winter? Give her full security clearance. She'll be working directly with me on this." After Marcus left, Byron pressed his forehead against the cool glass. For the first time since building his empire, he felt his control slipping. One meeting with Florrie Winter had melted more of his defenses than anyone had in years. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt more alive than he had in decades. He pulled out his phone and typed a message to his private investigator. "Full background check on Florrie Winter. Everything. Now." The response came quickly. "Sir, we already did when she was hired for the merger team. She's clean, brilliant academic record, stellar career trajectory. No scandals, no weaknesses to exploit." Byron deleted the messages. Of course, she was perfect. The universe wouldn't send anything less to challenge him. Walking to his private bar, he poured himself 2 fingers of scotch, something he never did during working hours. The liquid burned down his throat, but it didn't compare to the fire Florrie had ignited in his veins. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and decisions, but his mind kept returning to her. The way she stood her ground, the grace in her movements, the fearlessness in her eyes. As night fell over the city, Byron remained in his office, her files spread across his desk. Harvard Business School with honors. 5 years at a top consulting firm, countless successful projects. But the papers told him nothing about the electricity he'd felt in her presence. His phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. The Henderson numbers get worse after hours. Still awake? Despite himself, he smiled. Always. "Good, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Hope you like Thai food." Byron stared at his phone, realizing he'd just smiled for the first time in months. Running his fingers through his hair, he caught his reflection in the window. The Ice King looked different somehow. Less frozen, more human. The thought should have angered him. Instead, he found himself watching the clock, counting the minutes until Florrie Winter would walk back through his door and challenge everything he thought he knew about himself. 20 minutes suddenly felt like an eternity. The night stretched ahead, promising revelations both professional and personal. Byron Levi, the man who controlled everything, was about to learn that some forces of nature couldn't be contained, and that sometimes surrendering control could be the most powerful move of all. As he waited, he realized that Florrie Winter hadn't just arrived for a merger meeting. She'd walked into his life like a summer storm, about to wash away years of carefully constructed frost with the warmth of her presence. The Ice King's reign was about to face its greatest challenge, and deep down, in places he'd forgotten existed, Byron Levi welcomed the thaw. Chapter 2. The Spark. The Thai food containers sat forgotten on Byron's desk as midnight approached. The city lights twinkled below like earthbound stars, casting a soft glow through the windows of his penthouse office. Florrie had removed her blazer hours ago, revealing a silk blouse that caught the light with every movement. Her curls had loosened throughout the evening, framing her face in a way that made it difficult for Byron to focus on the documents before them. "Look at this pattern," Florrie said, leaning across his desk to point at a spreadsheet. The scent of jasmine enveloped him again, making his pulse quicken. The discrepancies always appear 3 days after each major acquisition. Byron moved closer, ostensibly to examine the numbers. Someone systematic about their deception. "Too systematic," Florrie replied, turning to face him. Their proximity sent electricity through the air between them. "That's how I caught it. Real business is messier." Her insight struck him. Most people tried to impose perfect order on chaos. Florrie understood that imperfection could be a sign of authenticity, just as her presence had begun to crack his own too-perfect facade. "You see things differently," he murmured, his voice low and intimate in the quiet office. She met his gaze, her amber eyes reflecting the city lights. "Is that a compliment or a criticism, Mr. Levi?" "Byron," he corrected automatically, surprising himself. "When we're alone, call me Byron." A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Careful. People might think you're human after all." He should have been offended. Instead, he found himself fighting back a smile of his own. "Your concerns about my humanity have been noted, Ms. Winter." "Florrie," she countered, her voice softening, "if we're breaking down walls, we might as well be thorough about it." The word thorough from her lips sent his imagination down dangerous paths. Byron turned away, walking to his private bar. "Drink?" "Water, please. I need to keep my head clear around you." The admission hung in the air between them, charged with possibility. Byron brought her a crystal glass of water, their fingers brushing during the exchange. The contact sent sparks through his system. Florrie took a sip, then set the glass down decisively. "We should focus on the Henderson files." Agreed. But neither of them moved toward the documents. She stood walking to the windows, the city spread out below them like a jeweled carpet. "It's beautiful up here." "Lonely," Byron found himself saying, the word escaping before he could stop it. Florrie turned to look at him, really look at him, as if seeing past every barrier he'd built. It doesn't have to be. The space between them seemed to shrink, though neither had moved. Byron felt his carefully constructed control beginning to slip. "Florrie, I know," she said softly. "This is complicated. The merger, our positions, your reputation, my career. Everything says we should keep our distance. But," he took a step closer, "but I've never been good at doing what I should." She met him halfway, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes. "Have you?" Byron reached out, his fingers ghosting along her jawline. Her skin was silk beneath his touch. "I've always done exactly what I should, until now." The first kiss was gentle, a question more than a demand. Florrie's response was anything but hesitant. Her hands slid up his chest to tangle in his hair, drawing him closer. Byron groaned, deepening the kiss as years of control shattered in an instant. She tasted like mint and possibilities, her body fitting against his as if designed for this moment. His hand spanned her waist, feeling the heat of her through the silk blouse. Every nerve ending came alive, singing with a desire he'd forgotten he could feel. Florrie pulled back first, her breathing uneven. This changes everything. Everything was already changing, Byron replied, his voice rough. From the moment you walked into my office. She traced his lips with her finger, the simple touch sending shivers down his spine. The Ice King melts, after all. Only for you. The words surprised him with their truth. A knock at the door made them spring apart. Marcus's voice came through. Mr. Levi, the Tokyo office is on the line about the emergency board meeting. Byron ran a hand through his disheveled hair. 5 minutes, Marcus. When the footsteps faded, Florrie was already gathering her things, her movements precise but hurried. We should have dinner with me, Byron said suddenly. Tomorrow night. Away from the office, away from Henderson, away from everything. She paused, her blazer half on. That's not a good idea. I know. He moved closer, drawn to her like a moth to flame. Have dinner with me anyway. Florrie looked up at him, conflict clear in her eyes. You don't date employees. I don't date anyone, he corrected, but rules exist to be broken. A smile tugged at her lips. Says the man who built an empire on control and protocol. Says the woman who made me want to burn the rule book. He traced her cheekbone with his thumb. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. She caught his hand, pressing a kiss to his palm that sent fire through his veins. Pick me up at 7:30. I know a place. With that, she was gone, leaving behind only the lingering scent of jasmine and the memory of her touch. Byron stood in his office, his body humming with an energy he'd forgotten he could feel. The phone rang again, Tokyo waiting for their CEO. Byron straightened his tie, trying to force himself back into the role of Ice King, but the frost wouldn't come. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Florrie's smile, felt her lips against his. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Sir, Tokyo is getting impatient. Handle it, Byron said, making a decision. Tell them I'll review their concerns in the morning. But sir, the protocol is changing. Byron gathered the Henderson files, his mind already on tomorrow night. Everything is changing. After Marcus left, Byron touched his lips, still feeling the ghost of Florrie's kiss. The Ice King's reputation had taken decades to build. She'd melted his defenses in a matter of hours. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt more alive than he had in years. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. As he prepared to leave the office, Byron caught his reflection in the window. His hair was mussed, his tie askew, his eyes alive with an inner fire that had been missing for too long. He looked nothing like the careful, controlled CEO who had started the day. He looked like a man awakening from a long winter, ready to embrace the spring. The night air was cool as he walked to his waiting car, but Byron barely noticed. His mind was filled with the taste of Florrie's lips, the sound of her laugh, the way she challenged him without fear. For the first time in years, he looked forward to tomorrow, not for the deals he would close or the power he would wield, but for the simple promise of seeing her again. The Ice King was thawing, and nothing would ever be the same. As his driver navigated the city streets, Byron's phone buzzed with a message from Florrie. Sweet dreams, Ice King. Tomorrow, I'll show you how the other half lives. He smiled. Something he'd done more in the past few hours than in the past few years. I'm looking forward to the education. Her response came quickly. Good, because once you step into my world, there's no going back. Byron leaned back in his seat, his heart racing with anticipation. "I don't want to go back," he typed. "I want to go forward, with you." The three dots appeared and disappeared several times before her final message came through. "Then prepare yourself, Byron Levi. Tomorrow we break all the rules." The promise in those words carried him through the night, his dreams filled with amber eyes and jasmine perfume, with kisses that melted ice and touches that burned like fire. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The Ice King was ready to burn. Chapter 3. Late Nights and Early Revelations. The restaurant Florrie chose was nothing like the elite establishments Byron frequented. Tucked away in a quiet neighborhood, Sophia's kitchen glowed with warm light and the aroma of home-cooked Mediterranean food. Byron had driven them there in his Aston Martin, foregoing his usual driver for privacy. Florrie wore a deep burgundy dress that made his mouth go dry, the silk clinging to her curves in ways that tested his legendary control. Her curls were loose tonight, falling past her shoulders in a cascade that caught the golden restaurant lights. "Not what you expected?" she asked as they were led to a corner table, intimate and away from prying eyes. "You never are," he replied honestly, pulling out her chair. The owner, Sophia herself, approached their table with a warm smile. "Florrie, tesoro, and you brought someone special." Byron watched in fascination as Florrie embraced the older woman, speaking rapid Italian that surprised him. The language flowed from her lips like music, adding another layer to her mystique. "I didn't know you spoke Italian," he said after Sophia left with their orders. Florrie's eyes sparkled over her wine glass. "There's a lot you don't know about me, Ice King. I want to learn everything." The intensity in his voice surprised them both. She set down her glass, studying him. "Why me, Byron? You've had countless beautiful women throw themselves at you. What makes me different?" Byron reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. "You don't throw yourself at anything. You stand your ground. You challenge me. You see past the frost to something I'd forgotten existed." "And what's that?" The man beneath the empire. He intertwined their fingers. The heart under the ice. Florrie's thumb traced patterns on his palm, sending shivers up his arm. "Dangerous territory, Mr. CEO. Hearts can be broken. So can empires." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. "I'm willing to risk both." The candlelight caught the gold flecks in her eyes as she leaned forward. "Show me." Byron felt his pulse quicken. "Here. Take me home," she whispered. "Show me the man behind the throne." They barely tasted their food, the air between them electric with anticipation. Byron left enough cash to buy the restaurant twice over, earning a knowing smile from Sophia as they hurried out. The drive to his penthouse was torture, every red light an eternity. Florrie's hand rested on his thigh, her touch innocent yet maddening. The scent of her perfume filled the car, making it hard to focus on the road. In the private elevator to his apartment, Byron finally gave in to temptation. He pulled her close, his lips finding hers in a kiss that made his previous control seem like a distant memory. Florrie melted against him, her hands sliding under his jacket to feel the heat of him through his shirt. The elevator doors opened directly into his penthouse, but they barely noticed the panoramic city views. Byron's jacket hit the floor, followed by his tie. Florrie's fingers worked the buttons of his shirt with maddening slowness. "You're killing me," he groaned as she pressed kisses to each inch of exposed skin. She looked up at him through her lashes, the mighty Byron Levi, undone by a simple touch. "Nothing about you is simple." He tangled his hands in her hair, tilting her face up for another searing kiss. They made their way to his bedroom, leaving a trail of clothing behind. The city lights painted patterns across Florrie's skin as she stepped out of her dress, the burgundy silk pooling at her feet. Byron's breath caught in his throat. "You're beautiful," he whispered, reverent. She moved closer, her heartbeat visible at the base of her throat. "Touch me,"